Hi, everybody. It's Alyssa and Jessica from Collins Hope, and we have made it through the 4th of July weekend, and we thought that it was time to come to you guys with a little update as now we're in the throes of the summer here and talk about some things that we've seen come up over the last few months, really, around water safety and things that might be helpful to you and your families. And so we're going to have a conversation about that, but before that, I just want to say, we did see a few drownings that we know of that occurred over the weekend, sadly. Our hearts and thoughts and everything go out to those families that were impacted by those drownings. And we know of at least two, one in a backyard pool and one in a lake, and children of a 13-year-old and a younger child. And so the messages that we're going to be talking about are real things. And, Texas alone has lost this year to fatal drownings, already the equivalent of one school bus of children. And so think about that. School buses are kind of a weird thing to think about right now because we're not using them, but it is something that everyone can kind of connect to. I mean, there's a lot of seats in a school bus, and sadly in Texas, that's the number of children that we could fill an entire school bus with the kids that we've lost this year to preventable drowning. And so we're here in this space again, in every way that we can to really just bring water safety and drowning prevention education to you and your families so that we can prevent these drownings from occurring. So with that, we're going to talk about a few things. I think the first thing that let's talk about is pool safety and maybe water safety around your home. And that might include your backyard pools, your kiddie pools, which we're going to talk about, even bathtubs. And we've seen drownings in those kinds of water around the home. So Jessica, let's talk about the first one. First we'll talk about the importance of appointing a water guardian. So here's our water guardian badge, right?
And handy.
Awesome. You have like a vintage one, I think. But this is our concept of always appointing an undistracted adult to be watching the water when your kids are in, near, or around it. And that means we know backyard pools are being used with incredible anybody who has one right now, it's hot here, so they're getting in them. And this water guardian concept, I think, is so important. I know I had a conversation with a friend this morning who over the weekend had a very scary situation with his almost 3-year-old, and there were 5 adults around, and she made it into the water, and it was a very real situation. And so this whole concept of appointing an adult water guardian to watch the kids, because drowning is fast and silent, and I can't mention that even more. And then so that's one thing, just water guardian, appoint them, become one, be one. Don't let your guard down, seriously. And then Jessica, let's talk about what we were talking about earlier, and that's the concept of people are putting their kids in puddle jumpers or life jackets, and we know that those are a layer of protection, but there is also a time when kids need to understand that when they're not in those flotation devices, that their bodies are not going to float on top of the water. So share with our friends what you witnessed this weekend with your son.
Yeah, so Alexander is now almost 3, which is wild. And I'm so grateful for all of the conversation we've had in the last year or so, I would say, about life jackets, because we hadn't been swimming all summer just with everything going on. Our apartment pool hadn't been open. We finally went. We're having a good time. Another family is there with their daughter that's a little bit older than Alexander, maybe like 4, and she's in a puddle jumper, and she jumped in, and she was just, swimming on top of the water in her puddle jumper. And so Alexander's saying that he wants to do that, where she's jumping in and then she's kind of swimming. And so I said, okay, let's jump. So I let him jump in, and I let him go down because of all the conversation we've been having lately about, really making sure that kids understand they don't float without that. Without that puddle jumper or life jacket. And so I let him go down. And once he kind of, got the shock off of being underwater, he was trying to tell me that he wanted to stay on top of the water. He was trying to tell me that he wanted to jump and float. And so it was this really blip moment of me realizing, oh my gosh, no, you cannot float without a life jacket. If you're going to be in here with me, I have to help you float. You can't do that by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just one of those little moments where I work in this every single day. We talk about this every single day, but it just, in real life, it just looked a little bit different, but it was there. The need to say, you can't float without a life jacket. And if you're in the water with me, I have to help you.
Well, and it's having that conversation. And so you had an opportunity in that moment to have the conversation with him and about, again, and he's been learning, he's our little mascot. He's been learning the whole hand rules. And so even to just keep having that conversation, but it's so important. And I was telling my friend this morning when I was talking to him about after the incident that he had over the weekend, of how important it is for kids to understand that unless they know how to float and have that training and are comfortable floating, they still need to understand that if they're wearing, even if they're wearing the U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket, when they take that off, that their body's going to behave differently. And that's so important. And I keep seeing examples of where people are keeping their kids in the life jacket or the puddle jumper, and then hearing the stories of kids making their way back. And I think that's something that we just have to keep talking about it, because life jackets are layers of protection. So is learning to swim and learning to float.
And I think it's such a great early example of, even if we are not regular swimmers. I'm not a competitive swimmer by any means. Like, swimming for me is just like it's a summer fun time activity. That's what swimming is for me. But it's such a great early example of, even if he's not a swimmer, he's seeing another kid do something that he wants to do. And if, let's say he wasn't with me, what if he was by himself kind of hanging out and he saw it and he just did it without the opportunity to say to me, I want to do that.
Well,
and that just, as he gets older, he's going to keep having those experiences of wanting to do what other kids are doing, even if he doesn't know that he can't.
Well, and that brings us to the next thing that I really wanted to talk about, was the importance of creating water safety rules. We talk about that all the time, but it's a great opportunity for, if you guys are listening, we did a broadcast way earlier about creating your family water safety rules. And we have these bookmarks that are on our store. And they're also downloadable, where you can create your family's, you can't really see it, but create your family's water safety rules. And it's a great chance to make a water safety rule. The rule that we have on the bookmark is we always have a water guardian, but another rule is I always ask permission before going anywhere near the water. And that's one that I think you can start that from the earliest of age. I mean, we talk about all the time about talking about water safety rules at the youngest age, the same urgency that we talk about don't touch a hot stove or buckle your seatbelt and those kinds of things. And so that asking permission is a huge one. And I think these conversations, if anyone is listening to anything that we're saying right now, it's like, have the conversation and create the rules around what your family is going to do around water. Another one, let's talk about the kiddie pool, the inflatable pool, the portable pool that seemingly is popping up everywhere. I know that I rode my bike this morning, and I started counting and then I stopped. I saw at least 10 yards where there were unprotected inflatable little kiddie pools of varying sizes that all had water in them. And of course I wanted to get off the bike and dump them all out and turn them all over. And but I don't know. Have you been seeing that as well?
So many. Well, and I live in an apartment, so there's a pool here, but I'm watching my Facebook feed or whatever, my social media feed, and there's so many people like, oh, I finally found a kiddie pool, or oh, I bought this off Marketplace, or I bought this pool for my friends. And it's not just like a plastic kiddie pool, it's like a giant above ground pool. And so for people, especially for people who maybe they've never had a pool or they haven't had one for a long time, and now they have kids, to be around that, it's just a thing where I'm reminded, oh my gosh, anybody, any day could just get a giant body of water, and they don't really have to delve into water safety at all if they don't know that it's a thing that exists.
Right. And those are really hard to block the access, to fence them, to do any kind of protection around them. And they're dangerous. It scares me when I see them, and I get it. It's hot. I mean, it's 100 plus degrees here in Texas. And so I see the need, especially with pools being sort of open, not open, lakes and parks being closed, especially over the weekend. I get it, but we have to protect, we've got to put some protections around those. And so be thinking about that. Another, and still bathtubs, we always want to talk about bathtub safety just because we know we've lost multiple, too many kids to bathtub drownings this year. But let's talk about the beach, because I was able to spend some time at the beach with family. And we've done multiple beach safety broadcasts, and I used my time at the beach with my family as a little laboratory and an lessons learned. And I learned some pretty incredible stuff. The first thing I would say, and we say this all the time, is go to lifeguarded beaches. If you're going to the beach, go to beaches where there are lifeguards. I know I was on a lifeguarded beach, and these are lifeguards that I have known for years and years. And so I watched how they managed the beach. And there were multiple times during the time I was there where they saw rip currents and they pointed them out, and they made swimmers only swim in a particular area where the lifeguards were and where the rip current wasn't. And had we been on a beach where there was no lifeguards, most people do not know how to spot a rip current. I would challenge you to go learn how to spot a rip current, but it's still, even then, it's hard to see and learn how to get out of a rip current, which we have great resources on our website, and our friends at the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project. I love their yell for help and remain calm, but then flip over, float on your back, and follow the current out, get parallel to the shore. That's the simple learn how to get out of a rip current. But so going on guarded beaches, I cannot stress that enough. If you're going to the beach, go to a lifeguarded beach if it's at all possible. And then the warning flags. I know I watched all week long, I watched the warning flags, different colors, be raised based on the surf and the weather. And it went from green one day, then it was yellow another day, and then a day they actually closed the beach because there was lightning, and they raised the red flag and they got everyone off the beach. And had we not been on that guarded beach and all of that stuff was happening, it's a very dangerous situation. Another one is this is something that I got to witness the lifeguards in action, and I want to give they did an amazing job, but there was a woman who lost her son and came up to the lifeguard stand and was very panicked and very worried because she couldn't find her son. So the lifeguards got into action. They made a call down the beach. They had 60 lifeguards come running from all the different chairs and down the beach, and they got in the water to start doing a search for this child. And I was able to actually ask the mother, does he have a cell phone? And she said yes. And so she called him and he answered his phone. He had gotten out of the water, not told her, and left the beach. Well, she thought he was in the beach. And so the lifeguards were called off. The lifeguards actually got a standing ovation from everyone on the beach when they got out. But that made me think about a family plan and having a water safety plan when you go to the beach, where and having those rules again. And immediately after that, we made a family rules of, if anyone gets out of the water, you have to tell an adult. And in our family, we have the guards, but then we also have adults that are watching. And so, but if for some reason we missed a kid getting out of the water, telling the adults that they are getting out of the water, so that you don't have that, because that was a very scary thing. And until I watched it play out, I wouldn't really have thought of that as a thing. So that's just a best practice, I think, there. And then also another thing is, when you get out of the water and there's a crowded beach, having a landmark of where your stuff is, or where because you can drift. And those are just little beach tips that I learned. And I did actually see, I'm very happy about this, I actually saw a more than in past years, kids in life jackets that were at the water's edge. And that, I loved seeing that because I think that's a layer of protection.
I think every drowning story is horrible and terrible, and we don't want anyone to experience what it's like to lose someone to drowning. But I think especially in the last couple of years, we've just seen an uptick of the attention that drownings are getting in the media. And as terrible as drowning is, the fact that people are paying attention to it happening and being more aware. Because I will say, the other day I was, someone posted on one of my mom's groups about about getting a pool, or do you know anybody with swim lessons? And just even a few years ago compared to this post that I saw, it was always just kind of like a flippant, like, oh yeah, maybe we use this, or oh yeah, maybe we use that person. But so many more comments were like, oh, make sure you have a life jacket, or oh, make sure that you learn about drowning, or whatever. Like, there's just comments of just reminding people that if they're asking about swim lessons, to be aware of how drowning happens often. And it's just such a nice refresher to see that I don't have to be the person doing it, because somebody's already gotten me, beaten me to that punch, which is great.
Well, I think that gives me hope. I have to say, that gives me hope that the work that we're doing, and everyone that's in the drowning prevention world and water safety world who is out there with us, who are literally screaming from every mountaintop and trying to get water safety into the hands of parents and caregivers, as well as into children, that I do have hope that we can create this change in our culture, just like we saw with seatbelts back in, I just turned 46. And so that was something that was happening when I was younger, now we wear seatbelts, and that's a cultural shift. And what we're really trying to do is create safer behaviors around water in children. So create them from the ground up, like with Alexander, from birth, literally. And in adults, some of it's creating behaviors, some of it's changing behaviors. One of the conversations I had with my friend this morning, when he was telling me about the situation that happened with his daughter, was that there was his parents were in the equation, and it was at their pool, and there's differing thoughts around the thoughts around water safety that even happened with the generation that was before my generation, because water safety is like a newer thing, and that wasn't a thing back then, and that was an interesting thing to see. But I do have hope that this culture of water safety that we're trying to create and change the cultural norms, that it is happening. It may be happening slower than any of us want, because we don't want any more drownings. We don't want to see any other family have to lose a child or almost lose a child to something that they can prevent. And so that when you're sharing that about seeing people making those conversations happen without us prompting them, or someone else prompting them, is awesome. The last thing I kind of want to talk about is just sort of things that have been happening, and we pay attention to the drownings that occur. We pay attention to what's happening in water safety, and try to bring applicable things. And I know lake safety and boating safety is something that I wanted to mention and spend a little bit of time. I know I live near a lake. I've spent lots of time down at the lake, both swimming and stand-up paddleboarding, and have been watching people's behavior, especially as we're also trying to incorporate social distancing in this, and all of that. And seeing that we had a 13-year-old in Texas lost to a lake drowning this weekend, as well as I saw a report of a 25-year-old. And so lake safety and boating safety is so important to talk about. And so obviously the first thing that we talk about is the importance of, wearing properly fitted U.S. Coast Guard approved life jackets. And that's every age. Honestly, in open water, it's just, you don't know what hazards are there. You don't know where rocks are. You don't know how deep it is. You can't see if someone goes down. We deal with things around hydration and getting dehydrated. It's so hot outside. And of course, with adults, there's alcohol that's being mixed in when people are going to the lake or going boating. And so, life jackets save lives, and have them, wear them, borrow them if you need to. So I want to talk about that. And then obviously, there's lots of situations around where there are cliffs, and I've seen people jumping off of cliffs and even diving off of cliffs. And that is, you don't know what's under the water. Again, you don't know how deep it is. And in some places, at least I know where I live, the lake is not constant level. So I could jump into water today that's 20 feet deep, and they could let water out of the lake, and it could be 10 feet deep the next day, and there's rocks that weren't there. And so that's something that I ask people to please pay attention to. I know we see it at one of the parks that I frequent, that there has been a lot of that happening. And again, the boating safety, life jackets, put them on before you even get on the dock. Sadly, we work with families who have lost children when they weren't even on a boat or in the water, but they were around around the docks. And so,
well, and I just want to make that connection really quick to,
yeah.
We're talking about lakes and boating, but also think about that when you're fishing or if you're going camping. I know it seems like I'm just going fishing, I'm just going camping. Why am I going to talk about water safety? But you just don't know where you're going to find water. And you don't, even if you're not planning to do that activity, it's better to have the plan than not.
Oh, that's great. Again, and thank you for pointing that out. It does talk about the whole, I think it's to bring back up the water safety rules and the water safety plan, and any plan that involves, if you're going on vacation or you're going somewhere, even camping, or to figure out what water is around and talk about it. I know we've also seen pond drownings. We see them every year, and ponds are typically not barriered, and there's nothing to slow down a child who wanders away. Or campgrounds have lakes, and a lot of people are camping right now. I mean, campgrounds are, parks are open, and you have to make reservations, but they're crowded, and that is definitely a reality of the times we're in right now. Is there's a lot of that happening. I mean, I see it on my own social media feed of how many people are camping and using that as a way to recreate. So that's a great point. Again, it's just be aware of all the water that's around. Have the conversations early and frequently with your family and with your kids, and then make your water safety rules around them. And I guess I'll finish this up with, Jessica, if you have any last minute words, but then let's challenge people to go and take our water safety quiz, which is collinshope.org/quiz. Questions of everything from don't leave your child unattended in the bathtub to how to get out of a rip current, and everything in between. So it's a great way to refresh your water safety knowledge. Take it with your kids. I mean, I remember years ago when we first developed it, taking it with my daughter, who was, I think, 8 at the time. We took it together, and that's just it's another great way to have a conversation starter. I think people are wondering often, how do they even start these conversations? Yeah.
Well, and I'll follow that up with use the water safety games from our website to have the conversation with your kids. We have bingo, we have loteria up there. I think we have a downloadable bookmark. Like, we have things on there on that site. So if you don't know how to talk to your kids, play a game. We've got them on our website.
Oh, absolutely. And we have all the lessons from our curriculum are up there too. And so we've got hopscotch, we've got water safety, we've got all kinds of stuff. So yeah, what a great, thank you for remembering that. We have so many resources, and go to the Collins Hope website and play around, but have the conversation. And we want you to love the water. We love the water. It's something that, and we know it's hot, but we want you to be as safe as possible and safer around water. So with that, those are just a few things that we've been seeing and hearing, and wanted to bring them to you. We're going to participate in the world's largest swimming lesson in the next week or so. So we challenge you to tune in. It's virtual, so you can tune into that and watch us on that, because, learning to swim, while it's a little bit of a different thing this year with what's going on and swim lessons, it still is an important thing in the layer of protection. So again, I'm going to challenge you. I'll do it in Spanish because this is the one that's here. But be a water guardian. Take our water safety quiz. Go create your family's water safety rules. Follow good water safety and create those behaviors. And I think that we can all have then a best day ever around the water. So with that, thank you guys. And Jessica, let's leave with a best day ever on 3.
Always.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Best day ever.